Good afternoon for me, Chanel, but I know it's morning for you. Is that right? Am I right in that?
Yes, it is. It's 10 a.m. here.
10 a.m. Well, thank you for taking time to do this interview. In February, you were shortlisted as one of the 25 stories in one of the world's most, global literature accolades, the Commonwealth Short Story Prize. And then in June, you were named as the winner. Your
Mhm.
book, Descend, got you here. So tell me all about it before we get into a bit about yourself.
Sure. So it's a short story, Descend. Essentially, it's about a bunch of enslaved Africans who are trapped on in the hold of a slave ship, and the ship is about to sink. So we hear the shuffling of feet of their captors above them, and instead of panicking or just going into despair, they decide to tell each other their stories as a way of keeping calm, but I think also as an act of resilience. um, and remembrance, because we're the ones reading the story, so we remember them through their voices. So yeah, so Descent is, I say, it's stories within a story. So there are four stories within the overall story, and we are hearing from these enslaved Africans.
I read that you took a risk with the book because you believe every enslaved person deserves to have their story told with dignity. Tell me more about that, please.
Well, oftentimes when we hear about the enslaved Africans that were brought over via the Middle Passage, we hear about the horrible brutality that they go through. We hear about the torture and the violence. And then while I was doing research for my novel in progress, I that's what I was coming up against. I wasn't really hearing their voices of what their lives were like before they were captured and brought over. Um, so I guess I was craving a little bit. That history. What were their villages like? What were their lives like? What did they lose? What was that loss, that's now lost to history and at the bottom of the Atlantic because many of them did perish. Um, so yeah, I took a risk because if I'm back craven, I decided to envision what those lives were like, and I wrote their stories based on my imagining of what they were like. Um, and I think I wrote it obviously because I was trying to satisfy something within myself. And so yeah, that's what I meant when I said it was a risk
How did you feel when you got to the end of that process?
of the writing process.
Yeah.
I was rushed. It was a rushed process because the story came out of nowhere. I was not really intending to write Descend. I was actually I was researching my novel, which is set in the Caribbean in St. Vincent. And so as part of the background of the novel, I wanted to understand more about the Black population that made it to the islands, especially my island. And so I was on my way to Greece when I just was restless in the plane, and I decided, you know what, let me just start writing this story just just for the act of writing. And Descent came out of that. And at the end of it, I literally pressed the end and had to send it into the Commonwealth Prize because it was the day of the deadline. So it was very rushed. So I finished this and just sent it in and didn't really expect anything. And now here we are.
I couldn't help notice that you were repping both Canada and St. Vincent. Tell me
Mhm.
more about that, how that comes to be the case. Tell me, what's your journey?
So I was born in St. Vincent, in a small village there, and I moved to Canada when I was 10 because my mom she had already moved here, so she was living in Montreal. So yeah, I came here when I was 10 and I've been living here ever since. And for the prize, I think you needed to be living in St. Vincent in order to be a part of that branch of the prize to win from that regional perspective because I'm living in Canada and Canada Europe representative.
What's life like? What's the contrast between the two?
St. Vincent, well, first of all, the cold. I think that goes without saying. Coming here, the first thing I noticed was the cold and the snow. But beyond that, I think St. Vincent and the Caribbean in general has a more relaxed way of life. There's a more community feel. I found when I came here. Everything in Canada is bigger. It's metropolitan. Montreal is a huge city. It's one of the biggest in Canada. So as a 10-year-old, you tend to feel lost. You can feel lost going from such a small village and then transplanted to this big metropolis. Um, so yeah, that was the big part for me. Also the language barrier. We do speak French here. French is our main language. And there's that, and obviously I grew up in a place where we had a lot more people looking like me, and then we came here and there was a lot more white people. So there was a bit of a culture shock in that respect.
You're a writer of fiction and creative non-fiction, right? There's going to be a few people out here watching, listening to this who are a little bit confused by the latter. Can you just dig that into that? How do you see that category?
So creative nonfiction is it's more about writing facts. It's about writing about in my experience, it's about writing about my life, but taking a creative approach to it. So using, you know, all of the tools that we were given with language and literature to tell a story more creatively. So, for example, my creative nonfiction story that won the CBC Nonfiction Prize in 2021, it's about my mom coming to Canada as a young mother, having left the children in the Caribbean. And so that's a true story. I'm sorry, no, that's not the story. That is based on my mom's story, but that's not the one I should be talking about. There's another one. Umbrella won the CBC Nonfiction Prize, and that's about my experience when I first came to Canada, the racism that I experienced at the hand of a white friend. And so I used a lot of, allegories and metaphors and so on. And that's where the creative comes into nonfiction. You're talking about your life, but you're using the tools that you find in literature, in fiction, to amplify the message that you're trying to get across.
Winning or being shortlisted, for this prize is often said to open up a wealth of opportunities.
Hmm.
Um, and obviously, we've had former winners speak about doors opening literally overnight. Yeah, so I wondered, obviously, looking at the fact that your debut short collection, Layaway Child, which is published by House of Anansi next year, is coming, was a
Hmm.
result of that, or if that was in the works before, and if you'd seen any kind of direct benefit from. How's life changed?
So, Lateral is not directly related to the winning the Commonwealth Prize. That was more from winning the CBC prizes.
Right.
So when I won my first CBC prize, House of Nancy reached out, and so that's been several years in the making. We're at the end of that journey now. Um, in terms of Commonwealth, how my life has changed, I think I went from being a national winner in Canadian contests to being an international winner. So now I think more people are exposed to my stories and my way of telling stories. In addition to that, I've had some interest to turn Descend into a film, or a short series. So we'll see. That's still early. It's early days yet, but I think the biggest change for me would be that.
Day to day, then, what does your life look like?
I recently transitioned to full-time writer. I left my day-to-day job just to pursue writing, at least to give it a chance to see where it takes me. And I've been lucky that it's been trending towards the positive. So my day is just writing. Like I get up, I write. Usually working on two projects at a time, just so that I don't get I don't want to use the term writer's block because I don't really believe in it. I think you can unblock yourself. Um, at least for me, I can unblock myself. But yeah, so I'm usually working on two projects at the same time. Right now, I'm writing my novel, but I'm also experimenting with this screenplay for Descend, see where it goes. And that's it. I write. I get up, I write, I read, I go for walks. I'm very boring.
Why did you put that label on yourself at the end? I don't know why you did that. I might have to cut that out. But anyway, right. The reason why I asked about your day to day is because, like, I noted from one of the quotes you wrote somewhere that, just a journey from the beginning, a young girl in St. Vincent, having limited resources, transitioning over to
Mhm,
Montreal. You've already detailed some of that journey and referenced the racism that you experienced at the hands of a friend. And
mhm.
I just wonder, are you like is it like a utopia now? Are you where you kind of want to be in terms of your life, or if not, what does that utopia look like, and how do you get there?
I think I'm at a very good place right now, and I'm very grateful for where I'm at. Um, what does utopia look like? God. I think I just live in the moment so often that I never think beyond that. But I think utopia would look like my first book being published, which is going to be next year, and maybe touring and meeting more readers, not just online, but in person, because I want to meet these people and I want to have conversations with them. And beyond that, just writing. Like honestly, that's all I've ever wanted to do. And because I spent 20 years away from it, 20 years doing something else, I think right now I'm just in the place where all I want to do is write and read, because now I have access to all those books that I didn't have access to when I was in the Caribbean, and all the resources. So I feel very fortunate and I'm very grateful for where I'm at. I
Well,
think things are. Go ahead.
Sorry to go. I was going to say, what was the previous day job? What was your life away from? Right.
I was a director of marketing, so I was an executive at a marketing for an IT firm. And that has been my career trajectory since I was like 20 years old, since I left university. So I did that for 20 years. I was at the height of my career, and then I won one prize. I won a second prize, and then I'm like, okay, maybe I should pay attention to this and give it some time and some of my energy and see where it takes me.
This competition is the only prize in the world where entries are submitted in Bengali, Chinese, Creole, French, Greek, Malayan, Maltese, Portuguese, Samoan, Swahili, Tamil, Turkish, as well as English. And I'm not saying that because you didn't know. I know you know that. I'm saying it so that the watchers and listeners really understand that, one, this is one of the reasons why I cover this competition. And knowing that you beat off, you saw off 7,920 entrants worldwide to take this prize, given the fact that you rushed it right at the end. I'd imagine that must be some type of feeling that.
I was shocked when I saw the number. I kind of, for some reason, I went into it thinking it was in the hundreds, right? And then I saw 7,000. And before I learned that I was the winner, I had kind of resigned and said, okay, I'm really happy being regional. Like, that's really 25 out of 8,000 is amazing. And when I learned that I won, I think there was this moment of disbelief where I just couldn't wrap my mind around what that looked like or what that meant for me and how I got there. Because like I said, the story was so rushed. I wrote it in a plane. Like, it was 6 hours, but I was still in a plane writing a story. And and so yeah, it was a long time. There's disbelief for like a week where I just, like, my head was in the cloud, I think. Not in a I wasn't being conceited. It's just I just could not believe it. I couldn't wrap my mind around it. And I'm still there, I think. It's crazy when I see that number, and I try to avoid any mention of that just because it gives me such anxiety because then it's like, what comes next? What do I do now? Like, where do you go from there, right?
Wherever you want.
Yeah.
It's
You're
been
very
a pleasure. It's been a
optimistic.
pleasure talking to you, and
You
getting to know a
too.
little bit about the person behind the award, behind the book Descend, and future projects coming up. If you had, like, full reign and a budget in place and comfort knowing that you weren't under no pressure to get it done, what would you write about?
Sci-fi. I would write about the future. Specifically, I think Afrofuturism is something I'm really interested in now. Like, what does our future look like based on what we know of our past? So I'm a huge sci-fi buff. So I think sometime in the future, that's going to be the direction that I go.
Look forward to reading it. Chanel G,
Me
is there
too.
anything else you want to share with us before we part ways?
No, just that I'm really, honestly, I'm very grateful and I'm really enjoying this moment. And if anyone is watching this and, doubting themselves about entering the prize, do it. It's free. You have nothing to lose. So put yourself out there. You never know what's going to happen.
Where can people follow you who want to kind of just, you know,
Through my website, csuther.com. So it's C and then the first 4 or 5 letters of my last name.com. You can contact me there. You'll learn all about my projects via the website or on social media. I'm on social media as well.